for me, it was like ambition didn't die in the delivery room. I've sat in rooms pre having kids where this has come up loads. People don't tend to say it to me anymore, but once you've had a kid, your career's done, or you've hit your glass ceiling.
Were there any unexpected parts of yourself that emerged during parenthood, either good or difficult to kind of reckon with?
I mean, parenting is significantly harder than I ever imagined. You come into this world of you can't just leave the house whenever you want to leave the house. You have no autonomy or control of like your day-to-day schedule. That is run by this tiny human.
Sedge is a leading voice in influencer marketing and brand strategy. As the founder and former CEO of Scene Connects, she built her agency into a £24 million global business working with brands such as Nike, eBay, and Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy. Hi everyone, and welcome to today's episode. Today, I'm so excited to be joined by Sedge Beswick. Sedge is a leading voice in influencer marketing and brand strategy. As the founder and former CEO of Scene Connects, she built her agency into a £24 million global business working with brands such as Nike, eBay, and Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy. Right. Her career began at Red Bull and 3UK before she became ASOS's first social media hire, where she launched their influencer program and grew a 17 million strong community. Sedge is also a mentor, speaker and author with media appearances on BBC and Sky and has delivered workshops with Google and Number 10 Downing Street. She continues to share her insights through consultancy and speaking engagements, empowering brands and individuals to navigate the evolving digital landscape with authenticity and impact. Stay tuned if you're interested in super important topics such as the power of marketing and identity crisis when becoming a parent. Hi, Sedge. Thanks for joining me today. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. We're going to delve into a lot of topics today. I know I've given a bit of an introduction, but could you just start by telling everyone a little bit more about yourself?
I feel like you covered everything. So yeah, I am Sedge. I have worked in marketing for nearly 20 years. And essentially, I just love to help brands to grow through social, through content, through influencer. So as you said, right now, I've exited the business and I am consulting. And it's brilliant because I get to do mom life and I get to do work and I love both. So it's good.
Amazing. You're in control, isn't it? It gives you more control.
Oh, my kids are in control.
I love that. But you have had a career in social media management, and then you did move into building your own successful business. What drove you to make the switch?
I would say very much it was a happy accident, right place, met the right person. So I was very early into social everywhere I went, from being the first hire in social when I was at 3, moving across to ASOS, as you said. And then when I was 27, I had been at ASOS for 5 years. When you've been at ASOS for 5 years, I can't speak for it now, but it was like being there for 30 years. It was a really amazing, but like very intense place to work. So I decided it was kind of time for me to move on. I was chatting to other places, like Instagram was one of them. And I met who then became my investor for like 15 minutes in Shoreditch House. And I'm very kind of overexcited, passionate. That is like how I am when I'm not exhausted from my kids. And I met him and I was like, this is what I want to be doing, like whether that is with Instagram, whether that's in a brand. And the rest, as they say, is kind of history. We set up the business and off we were going 3 months later.
Amazing. It's interesting that you talk about where you met your first investor. That's why the topic we're covering today is so important, this whole networking, element that we're going to touch on. And so, you're someone that has run your own business, but you've also worked for other companies. So whether someone is running their own business or navigating their career, how important would you say networking is? And how has your approach evolved over time?
Yeah, I'm obviously incredibly biased because I've networked since I was like 16. And I think the word networking comes with such gross and like it feels dirty. It feels like you're trying to like use people to get where you need to get to. And that's absolutely not what networking is, in my opinion. It is fostering and building relationships where you can add value and vice versa. And so obviously, as you said, I networked to meet my investor. We met for 15 minutes. The agency got set up. But when I started my career, I started working at 16. I was always kind of keeping in touch with people, seeing how they were. Like at my core, I love people. I love being around people. I get energized by being around people, but I'm significantly better at smaller one-on-one conversations. Like if you were to say you need to go and sweat a room with 150, 200 people, I'm terrible. Like I'm like the most introvert extrovert in those circumstances, in those situations. So for me, like you should be building your network from the second you start your career. You should be aspiring to people of where you want to take and get your career to. And that is just all, again, like I say now, like your net worth, your
Mm,
network. Oh, sorry. I say now your network is your net worth
yeah.
because it's about building and fostering those relationships, learning from other people, giving time back. Like you never know where people are going to end up. And I think that's why it's integral to kind of building your career is staying connected to people that you want to be connected to.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? One thing you've just touched on there is, I don't know if preference is the right word, but you've mentioned if it's one-on-one, you know, you're great, but it's a bit more challenging in big audiences or big rooms. What advice would you give to people that find networking intimidating or inauthentic? How can they kind of reframe their mindset?
You have to make networking successful, you have to make it work to you. You have to understand how you show up best. You have to be yourself. Like you can't be one person in a room and a completely different person on LinkedIn and then a completely other person on Instagram. And then you go on stage and you've got a completely different energy. Like, so for me, it's always been about like, how can I be the best version of me and
Mm,
how can I be as comfortable as I possibly can be? And I'll always be uncomfortable or have a kind of degree of imposter syndrome or nerves. All of those things are good things because it shows that you care and it shows that you want to make sure that you're doing right by doing good being there. But it's again, for me, some people are unbelievable at just having a glass of champagne, walking around an event at 6 p.m, making small talk with people. I'm not great at making small talk with my husband. So why do I think I'm going to be good at making small talk with a room full of strangers?
yeah,
Whereas again, I feel for me, it's very much around like those more intimate environments. I can get so much more. And I find my brain going overtime, thinking about what they could do, whether they take that, whether we do something together. So my advice is always like work out kind of your superpower where you feel good. And all of that stuff is scalable too. So pushing yourselves out of your comfort zone as you go. So it might start with a coffee with a stranger. And, you know, I'm more than happy to speak on stage at South by Southwest or Madfest. That stuff doesn't faze me. Um, but it's like the important bit is like staying integral to who you are. That's how you're going to build your confidence because at the end of the day, you can just fall back on you as a person.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you know that authenticity piece as well, by the way? I've seen no matter who I speak, I've seen a theme in the importance of that, by the way, in terms of like, even the way you show up on LinkedIn, I would say if people meet you in person and you're not a completely total different person, then you're probably doing a good job because I don't know that that's always the case, if that makes
Oh,
sense.
100%. I think people panic about LinkedIn. They think about how they want to be perceived rather than realizing that people buy from people. It's about humans. It's about the trust. And yes, you might use AI to support to help you, but you still have to craft that into your own narrative, your own words, the stories that you've got to bring to the table.
Yeah.
And you know, I swear on LinkedIn, I swear on podcasts, I swear in person. Like you know, I swear at the table with my grandparents. So like those are the things that work for me. If and I've actually talked about this recently, but I used to have Nike as a client. I'd worked with Nike for the best part of a decade. And like Nike knew that I was how I dressed. I was in Nikes, I like white leather trousers, whatever kind of grungy attire might get thrown my way. And I once got asked to go to a meeting with like a huge corporate business, and they sent a dress code the night before, and it was basically like a full face of makeup, a pencil skirt, stiletto heels. And I was meeting Nike immediately afterwards. I was like, I will be so bad in this meeting because I'll feel uncomfortable. It'll feel so unnatural for me. And then I'll get laughed out of town when I go to to meet Nike, who've worked with me, who know me, and all of a sudden I'm dressed like I've kind of stepped out of some like 60s sitcom about women working. And I actually turned down the meeting. I was like, based on the dress code, like this isn't right for me. And as my business would have scaled, there probably would have been people that would have been right to be in that environment. But for me, we were never going to win that work. So why would we then pull together a pitch which costs a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of effort for them to decide based on the way that I dressed whether I was right for them or not?
Yeah, yeah. I feel like that's staying true to yourself first, even before you kind of go into it in terms of what you can get out of or working with someone else. That's powerful. Very powerful. So I feel like this next question is going to be relevant to those that are, whether they're in their own, managing their own business or navigating their careers. But what are your thoughts on networking up and networking across? Do you believe in both, and why? And do you think one's more important than the other?
Neither is more important. I definitely believe in both. You never know where people are going to end up.
Yeah.
So actually, even if someone is today, I go into universities, I go into schools. Some of the clients that I've won are people that are 5, 6, 7 years younger than me, who haven't started their careers yet, who, you know, if you tell them something or you help them on your journey or review their CV, they'll always remember that. And again, a bit cheesy, but people will often forget what you say. They will always remember the way that you made them feel. And the honest answer is I can probably add more value to people who are starting their careers than I can to someone who's a CMO at a big, Fortune 500 business. So if I want someone who is a CMO at a Fortune 500 business to give me time, again, doing right by doing good, I have also got to find the time and make time for other people too. So for me, your network is, you don't know where people are going to be, you don't know who other people know. So if it can feel like a two-way exchange and you can bring people in, don't just shoot your shot and try and go for the person you think's got the biggest check that they can sign to help you and support you. That's just not how the world works.
Yeah, yeah. Can I just say, you've mentioned something so important as well. You actually don't know who people know and how they can connect you with others. So that should never be underestimated. Never.
Yeah. And I also think, like, if you want to be connected to someone too, like, as I was starting my career, like, LinkedIn didn't exist. It was very much Facebook. Twitter was huge. You now have more control and autonomy to be able to connect and meet the people that you want to meet. You can send people messages on LinkedIn. You can slide into their Instagram DMs. They can ignore you. The worst thing they can do is say no. But actually, you'll be so surprised by how many people will say, yeah, or I'm interested in that, or this is a really great time, or actually just follow back in 6 months' time because that's going to be on the agenda for me. That's important for me. And especially if you're early on in your career, just saying to someone, I want to have 20 minutes because you are where I want to be in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time. You're kind of tapping into their ego a little bit, but they'll also remember someone that once helped you, that allowed you to be able to get your first job or your first interview or your squiggly career where you're like, I know I'm not the right candidate for this, but I'm the underdog, so I wanted to get in touch. Can we just jump on a call? And like, you might not have experience, but if you've got enthusiasm, that you can sell.
Yeah. Isn't it crazy, the power of being able to like slide into DMs now and just connect directly is and you saying that LinkedIn never existed, you've probably seen that transition like come.
100%. And
Yeah.
again, at ASOS, most of the people that I hired were people that got in touch with me. It was more Instagram by that point, but people would be like, I've seen this job. All I want to do is work at ASOS. Can I send you my CV? And we were getting, 5,000, 6,000 CVs every time ASOS ever posted a job. That was just going through the automated systems. Often some of the best jobs and CVs and experience I would never even get the opportunity to see, and they would never come on my desk, or HR might not know exactly what it is that they were looking for. So people showing that they really, really wanted the job, that always stood out for me.
Yeah, yeah. And so you've mentioned about, again, going back to how you met your initial investor, or you meet people in different places. How do you nurture, or you network initially, how do you nurture those relationships over time?
Yeah, as I said, it's a two-way relationship. A network, and your network is not someone that you ring and say, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this. Like, that is never going to work. That person, I've had people do that to me in my career, and they are the people that I just don't even bother opening the WhatsApps to anymore, or they're in my archive folder. Whereas it might be, even when I became a parent, there was someone I used to work with. I was like, can you just talk to me about nurseries? What am I looking for in a nursery? When is the right time to send a kid to nursery? And she had a really amazing career. It was someone I really looked up to. And we were on the phone for like 2 hours. I hadn't talked to her for 2 years. We were talking about nurseries. We were talking about kids. We then got to reconnect at Cannes when I was there with I think she was like probably 5 months at that time. And she'd been a mom, so I could go for a wee and she could look after Mari, my daughter, for me. And it's a human. It's something that she's been through. It's something that she has had to navigate herself. And I actually didn't take her advice. I didn't send my kids to nursery as early as she did, but just getting someone else's perspective and view was hugely, hugely important to me. And I did that with 10 people. And that's how I formulated my own view and my own opinion. I have people all the time saying to me, I want a job, or I've seen that someone here. But the way that those messages can come across, like I advertised for a job recently and someone I'd lectured to sent me a message, spelt my name wrong, spelt the business names wrong, and then just said, get me a job. And I was like, I am actually not going to even bother replying. Whereas that person had actually stood out in my mind when I went into lecture. And had they just spent 5 minutes crafting a message, explaining the why, sending me their CV, that have 100% got through to interview. But if you don't show me that you care or that you value the interaction, it's just a bit like, you sort me out. Thanks very much. Like, that's one way. There's nothing else in it. So for me, it's like, they get engaged, you make sure you send them a message, they have a big milestone. And there's still, people that worked with me at ASOS who were sending me engagement cards and marriage cards who I hadn't spoken to for years, but they're like these amazing moments in people's lives that mean so much to them. And I can tell you on my hand, every single person that sent me a message, that sent me a card, that sent me something. In the same way, if someone does something to help you, they look at your CV, they make an introduction, say thank you.
Yeah.
It's small, basic stuff. And I keep using the word human, and saying the same thing again, like, you remember how people made you feel. If I got you a client, I've had someone be like, great, you introduced me to a client. Now, do you mind just finding me about 5 or 6 more? I'm like, I don't work for you. But then I've had other people send me, flowers or just a really nice voice note to go like, I really appreciate the fact that you've done this. Like, I didn't have to, I don't get any monetary value for it. It's not about growing my business, but it's just doing right by doing good. And that is how you build your network.
Yeah, I feel like little genuine things go a long way. When you spoke about the student that you lectured and they reached out, the example you gave there reminded me of, it's not what you say, it's how you say it as well. They said, oh, get me a job or something like that. There really is power in like framing your words correctly.
Yeah. And it's again the same way, even when we were talking before about showing up as yourself. If you're sending a LinkedIn message to someone and you're very, I'm wonderful and I'm brilliant and this is my big elevator pitch, but then you jump on a call and you're more relaxed, like, that message still has to be, it's being read by a human again. So you have to just be yourself for all of those touch points, but still professional. And
Yeah.
that's the bit that got lost a little bit before.
Yep. This is a perfect segue. You actually touched on, you went to someone for advice about like when you had your first child and what have you. And so one of the other key topics that we were going to touch on today is the identity crisis, when you become a parent. So how would you have described your identity before becoming a parent, both kind of professionally and personally?
Personally and professionally, my entire identity was work.
Oh, really?
And that's not a problem. Like, I don't think it's a problem. I love working. I've always loved working. I've always thrived being around people, taking different challenges from whether internally or from clients. And because I ran a business, there was always something to do. When I worked at ASOS, it was really early days. We were really early into social. There was always something to do. And so subsequently there was, working in social, working in influencer. It's a 24/7 gig. And anyone who tells you otherwise is lying. So I was never short of an opportunity to work evenings or weekends. And for me, I grew up where both my parents worked away a lot and we've got, great relationships. We do loads together. But for me, I was like, society, you tend to have kids later. I was 30. How old am I now? I was 32, I think, when I had my first kid, maybe 33. And I wanted to be able to be in a position in my career where I could spend more time with her and with my now 2 daughters. So the harder and the more I worked early on, the better window and opportunity to get there that I had.
Yeah. So would you say you lived to work initially so that you can kind of work to live?
100%. That's a great way of putting it. Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. And so can you remember the moment or period when you kind of started to feel a shift in your kind of sense of self after becoming a parent? Was there like a...
Yeah. The whole time I was pregnant with Mari, I told everyone, I'll just be back after 2 months. Ring me, call me, do whatever. And then I have this tiny human who fully depends on me. And you're like, what the hell? Like, I don't want to stop spending time with her to be able to pick up a work call about something that's so irrelevant and so pointless in my day to day. And I don't know how American women only have a few weeks off on maternity. Like, it baffles me because I was fully going into my maternity leave expecting to come back really quickly. And that caused bigger problems because the expectation was that Sedge would just be back, Sedge can pick that up, Sedge can sign that off. And then when I had my daughter, I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be that person anymore. I want to be mum first and foremost, and I have to change my narrative to make that work for her.
Yeah, yeah. So again, it's, I guess it's, to a degree, it's like that work to live has gone out the window now, and like the priority has shifted, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think the important thing is like I still want to work
Yeah,
and I also still need to work. And I think that often gets a bit lost in translation for me is like, well, you had a business, so it's fine. You don't have to work anymore. Like I still have to work, but I also love working. I've always loved building my career, working on projects, working on clients, working with people. And so, you know, my second kid is 8 months old now. I'm working and like I actually feel like I've had the most relaxing time off. My husband's like, well, you haven't had time off. You've still been working, but I've made it work for me. I've made it work around her schedule. I've made sure that I've been really strict around my time so that I can be mum and that I can also be, you know, and it's easier because I'm not in an office environment. I can work remotely. I can do drop off. I can do pick up, you know, but it's what I had to set boundaries for what I and how I wanted to show up at work, but also at home.
yeah. And so, were there any unexpected parts of yourself that emerged during parenthood, either good or difficult to kind of reckon with?
I mean, parenting is significantly harder than I ever imagined. I have always loved kids. I've loved all my friends' kids. I've like grew up in an environment where there are always kids around and I was babysitting. I was always the kind of like lively, energetic one doing whatever with anyone's kids. And then you come into this world of you can't just leave the house whenever you want to leave the house. You have no autonomy or control of like your day-to-day schedule. That is run by this tiny human. My first was an awful sleeper, and I didn't realize how bad of a sleeper she was until I had my second, who was an absolute dream, touch wood. And being sleep deprived, trying to run a business, trying to look after other people's livelihoods because it's keeping them in jobs, keeping the business growing and developing, like it just didn't work for me anymore. And there's never, ever when running my business did I anticipate not being there and not running the business. And that was the thing that immediately had to give for me.
Yeah, but so do you feel like between your first and your second, there was like more of a conscious decision as well in terms of like the time you've kind of taken off for?
I'd already made the decisions
Yeah.
and I'd already made the hard choices because consulting, I can do it in the evenings, I can do it around nap schedules. I've got a childminder who helps out 2 days a week now, but that got scaled up. So I've always had the autonomy and the ability to be able to do what I needed to do. And if something else came in, I could scale it. Whereas when you have a business and you have 60 employees and you're office based, that was the bit for me. Like the first time I got on the tube, it's an hour into Shoreditch from my house. I just felt physically sick and cried the entire time. And then when I was in the office, I wasn't showing up as my best self either because I was riddled with anxiety. Like I've luckily not been a very anxious person. And all of a sudden, like everything kind of didn't make sense in my entire world. And I'd been so confident and secure being Sedge who loves to work. And then I was still wanting to work, but not work in the same way. And I was so comfortable and happy and content at home being mum, but then I couldn't find or work out how I was supposed to be and show up at work, which is the place where I'd had the most identity. And then secondary to that was also trying to then navigate. There is definitely a notion, and I've sat in rooms pre having kids where this has come up loads. People don't tend to say it to me anymore, but you know, once you've had a kid, you're kind of your career's done, or you've hit your glass ceiling, thanks very much, or they probably won't come back to work. And actually, for me, it was like ambition didn't die in the delivery room. I wrote that recently in a LinkedIn post. Like, I'm more ambitious and I'm more focused, and I'm not dicking around with a loads of things that I feel like I have to do to make other people happy. I'm doing what I absolutely need to do, and I'm getting shit done quickly and correctly because the sacrifice is not being able to spend time with the kids.
Yeah, yeah. And I think you kind of touched on it just a moment ago, but were there moments where you felt almost like a guilt, maybe wanting to hold on to parts of your pre-parent self, post-parent?
Yeah, I think like again with second for me, I just felt like my second just like slotted in and it's like Orly has always been here. But the first, it was like a real shock to the system. And so much of my running the business was going out for client dinners, for drinks, entertaining people. And then all of a sudden you're like, need to go to bed at 8 o'clock because you're going to get woken up constantly throughout the evening and you're operating on complete exhaustion. And so like I had a lot of guilt turning up at work and not being with my daughter. And I still have that now. Um, but there was never guilt the other way in the sense of like missing the old me or missing how but it was definitely just a shock. I don't know why it never occurred to me that I obviously just couldn't leave the house whenever I wanted to, or even just to take her for a walk. I have to be like, cool, I fed her, I've changed her, she's now in the pram, I've got this window, off I go. Then she poos or she vomits up her milk, and you're like, okay, well, we can't go for a walk now. And you're like, it's just a 20-minute walk that I was doing, like as if I can't get out the house when you've had so much control previously of everything that you've done on your schedule.
Yeah. If only babies knew how much they really rule the roost.
Oh, I mean, I feel like my 2.5-year-old now knows that, like, this is her house. She's
Yeah.
the boss, and she is the one that's dictating all the orders. And I'm just behind her going, okay, whatever you need.
That's so funny. But have there been any particular support systems, routines, mindsets that have helped you navigate the change over time?
That's a great question. For me, making sure I found time to work was still, I wanted to be able to use my brain. I wanted to keep kind of tapping back into what we said before, but like working with people, talking to people. I didn't want every conversation to be how many times my kid has vomited or shit throughout the day, which when you go to moms groups, that is all you talk about. So for me, having those two clear differentiations has been like really helpful for me to just still feel like me and still try to maintain and keep up some of my identity and know that I can, I've never, I get very overwhelmed and I've never had that before in my career. But I think because the sacrifice is so big for me, if I take on this huge job and I miss bedtime and bath time, or I'm too tired in the morning to be on my A game when the childminder's helping me out. All of that stuff really plays into the mum guilt. And so then feeling overwhelmed, and I'll literally just sometimes like stare at my husband. I'm like, I don't think I could do all of this. I've taken on too much. I've been an idiot. Like, what was I thinking? And then as soon as I break it down for me, then I'm like, cool, no, actually the routine that I have and the routine that works is how I manage to get through everything that I need to do to the absolute best of my ability. In terms of like other stuff that works, it's just finding something to do each day. It's again a bit cheesy, but there's fun and lighthearted. Like some people thrive in the early years of parenting, and that is their calling, and that is amazing. For me, there has definitely always been this monotony to the like 0 to 6 months, because all you're thinking about is sleep schedules and milk schedules, and every day is exactly the same, or it might be a little bit out by 5 or 10 minutes. But I was used to just having curveballs thrown at me all day, every day, and life being very much a roller coaster. And that's how I got my adrenaline too. So even just like the challenge of meeting someone for a lunch, a coffee, catching up with a friend, all of that stuff is very important to me to kind of keep my sanity when in the early stages of like having babies.
Yeah. And there's one thing you spoke about there, like maintaining your own identity, as in outside of, I guess, being a parent, even though you love it. What I've heard people say is maintaining their own, who they are themselves or something, looking out for themselves.
Honestly, I can see such a difference in like how I am as a mom, how I am at work, just by putting makeup on in the morning, because you feel like you, because often I am, going out and I've got sick or a bit of peanut butter on me somewhere somehow. But I'm 2.5 years into nearly 3 years into this now, and I'm still like, I can't decide what to wear. My entire body has changed because I have grown humans. And one part of my logical side of my brain is very much, you managed to grow two healthy humans, and that is unbelievable, and your body did that, and that is incredible. And the other half of me is like, for fuck's sake, why can't I find something that looks good so that when I'm showing up to work or I'm in a meeting, I still feel like me? And I often find myself like still, and I guess my second is only 8 months, but like pulling my trousers up and tweaking my top, and that stuff I never used to do. But that is also tied back into just getting comfortable in your new skin. When you're not who you were before, you've had to kind of change and evolve, and that identity, or how you show up in terms of what you're wearing, is so integral to that as well.
Yeah. And so out of everything you've kind of experienced and going through like the identity shift of becoming a parent, what's the one thing you wish someone had told you that you would probably tell someone else about it?
God, that's a fantastic question. Uh, and the funny thing that immediately comes to mind is like, no one actually tells you until you're pregnant how horrendous childbirth can actually be.
Oh,
And so I went into it like skipping and jumping, being like, this kid's going to come out fully dressed, wonderful, like ready to go. And I had the worst, 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 well, pregnancy, but also birth with my first. Um, and it's only when you're pregnant, people are, or after you've had a kid, everyone's like, oh yeah, let me tell you about that now. But I get it because no one would have kids if people told the truth straight up. But I think the thing for me is just still try to find, even if it's like 20 minutes a week, something for you.
okay. I
So
like that.
have a bath, go for a walk, do a call with your best mate. It's just that one little thing to kind of really help your mindset and still just feel like you at your core.
Amazing, amazing. And so you have experienced so much. What's one accomplishment you're most proud of out of everything and why?
It's obviously going to be having my girls. Yeah, I wouldn't change a single thing for the world. They are phenomenal and they are brilliant. And whilst it is tough and exhausting, it is also just brilliant and fun. Like I just got Mari's school report through, and it's like Mari said she had a bad weekend. She didn't have fun this weekend, and I was like, we went to the zoo, we did this, we did this. And it's like, but she was giggling afterwards, telling us. And I'm like, yeah, she's manipulating me into like making sure the next thing is like bigger, better, more fun. And that's just like all of the fun, weird things that kind of come with being a parent. But like from a career perspective, I think it's the ability and having the power to know when to leave the business that I founded. It wasn't an easy decision. It was incredibly hard.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Sedge. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm sure there's so many people, these type of topics are so important in terms of, especially networking today, but also something that so many people go through in terms of becoming a parent, whether you're running your own business or in the workplace, and like how it changes you or, how it impacts you. So I'm sure so many people are really going to enjoy this episode. So again, thank you for joining me.